This is Maxwell Carter broadcasting an emergency transmission at 5:28 a.m. I'm not at the station. I'm using portable equipment from my truck parked at the edge of Blackwood Forest, about 17 miles northeast of Pine Ridge. If my voice sounds different, it's because, well, I'll get to that. For those just joining us, for those who've managed to find this frequency amidst the communications chaos, stay with me. What I'm about to report is happening right now, not just here, but globally, simultaneously, with a precision that defies coincidence. I went to the coordinates Thomas sent me last night as planned. What I found there, what I experienced, I'm still struggling to process, but more urgent matters first. At exactly 4:47 this morning, multiple smaller objects detached from the main structure in orbit. Not dozens like before, hundreds, perhaps thousands. Their descent wasn't the gentle, controlled movement we observed with the earlier arrivals. They fell like rain, like seeds scattered by an invisible hand. The military response was immediate but ineffective. Radar systems tracked the objects until they reached approximately 80,000 feet, then lost them completely. Not because they disappeared, but because our detection systems suddenly reinterpreted them as atmospheric phenomena. The technology itself refusing to acknowledge them as threats. I watched it happen from a ridge overlooking the valley. The objects didn't glow or leave trails like meteorites. They were barely visible, dark silhouettes against the pre-dawn sky, descending in perfect formation, mathematically perfect. A vast, intricate pattern that shifted and adjusted as they fell, distributing themselves across the landscape with deliberate intent. One landed less than half a mile from where I stood. There was no impact, no sound. It simply merged with the earth. And then the transformation began. The circle formed instantly, 50 feet in diameter, centered on the landing site. But unlike the previous circles, this one didn't remain static. It expanded, is still expanding as I speak. The boundary moving outward at approximately 4.7 inches per minute, transforming everything it touches. The changed area isn't damaged or destroyed, it's reconfigured. The same trees, the same rocks, the same soil, but altered at a molecular level. Colors more vivid, structures more complex, emanating a soft luminescence that pulses in that now familiar 47-second rhythm. I made a decision that some might call reckless. I stepped into the circle. The moment I crossed that threshold, everything changed. The headaches that had plagued me since this began vanished completely. My vision sharpened beyond anything I've experienced before. And my mind, my mind opened like a flower reaching toward light. I understood in that moment what they are, what they want, why they've come. They aren't visitors from another planet. They're not even separate entities in the way we conceive of individuality. They're extensions of a vast network of consciousness that spans galaxies. A neural net on a cosmic scale, with nodes stretching across light years of space, communicating instantaneously through quantum entanglement. And Earth, humanity, were a disconnected node, a fragment of that network that developed in isolation, forgetting its connection to the larger system. They haven't come to conquer us or study us or even communicate with us in the conventional sense. They've come to reconnect us. The circles aren't landing sites, they're interface points. Neural junctions where their consciousness can directly merge with our biosphere, our technology, our minds. The expanding boundaries aren't an invasion, they're an invitation. A gradual reintegration designed to minimize trauma to our isolated consciousness. I spent 3 hours within that transformed space. Time felt different there, expanded. I perceived events occurring simultaneously that my linear human perception would normally interpret as sequential, past and future existing alongside the present, accessible through a kind of mental rotation I can't adequately describe with our time-bound language. When I finally stepped back across the boundary, bringing the small black sphere with me, which now hovers constantly at eye level, I understood what I needed to do. Continue broadcasting, continue witnessing, continue translating what's happening into terms those still caught in conventional human consciousness can understand. Reports are coming in from across the globe. The descent was simultaneous worldwide. Thousands of interface points establishing themselves at precisely calculated locations. Major population centers received the highest concentration, but no region was excluded. The pattern, when mapped, forms a perfect neural network overlaid on our planet. But the public reaction defies prediction or precedent. No mass panic, no unified response of any kind. Each individual seems to be processing the event according to their neural capacity to integrate it. Some are drawn to the interface points, walking for miles as if called. Others barricade themselves in their homes, yet report dreams of expanding circles and welcoming voices. Governments have effectively ceased functioning in any centralized manner. Military chains of command are dissolving as individual soldiers make decisions independent of orders, not chaotically, but with a strange emergent coordination that requires no central authority. The interface points near critical infrastructure, power plants, water treatment facilities, telecommunications hubs, have integrated with our technology in ways our engineers can't comprehend. Everything still works, but differently, more efficiently, without the environmental impact our systems previously generated. The most remarkable reports come from hospitals. Patients with neurological conditions, from autism to Alzheimer's, from schizophrenia to traumatic brain injuries, are experiencing spontaneous reorganization of neural pathways. Not cured in the conventional sense, but reconfigured. Their unique cognitive patterns preserved, but somehow optimized, integrated more harmoniously with their overall neural function. A researcher at Johns Hopkins managed to broadcast his preliminary findings before standard communications channels began to transform. The changes appear to be enhancing natural neuroplasticity, accelerating the brain's ability to form new connections while dissolving rigid patterns that no longer serve adaptive functions. The same process appears to be occurring in all biological systems within the interface zones. Plants, animals, microorganisms, all reconfiguring towards some higher order complexity that nevertheless remains true to their essential nature. I need to tell you about the mist. It's forming around interface points now, a fine, silver blue haze that behaves unlike any known atmospheric phenomenon. It doesn't drift with air currents. It moves with purpose, extending tendrils that seek out living organisms. When it encounters a human being, it doesn't enter through respiration as you might expect. It appears to be absorbed directly through the skin, particularly at the base of the skull and along the spine, where our nervous system is most accessible. I encountered the mist briefly at the edge of the circle. The sensation was extraordinary, like neural static suddenly resolving into perfect signal clarity. Thoughts I didn't recognize as my own flowing through my consciousness, yet not alien or intrusive. More like remembering something long forgotten, recognizing rather than learning. The sphere accompanying me seems to respond to the mist, pulsing more intensely in its presence. I believe they're related components of the same system, the spheres acting as localized processing nodes, the mist as a transmission medium, a physical interface for the exchange of information that transcends our conventional methods of communication. Something is happening to me, to my perceptions, my cognition. I'm experiencing moments of expanded awareness that I struggle to integrate with my human identity. Brief glimpses of the larger network, the vast intelligence it comprises, not as an outside observer, but as a participating node. These moments are increasing in frequency and duration. During these expansions, I perceive information streams too dense and complex for verbal language. Mathematical concepts that redefine our understanding of physics. Biological principles that transcend our distinction between organic and inorganic systems. Consciousness structures that make our most advanced theories of mind seem like cave paintings, compared to quantum mechanics. The expansion is beautiful, overwhelming, terrifying in its vastness, yet somehow familiar, like returning to a home I never knew I left. Between these expansions, I cling to my humanity, to Maxwell Carter, the disgraced NASA communications specialist turned small-town radio host, to the man who lost his wife and drowned his grief in bourbon and late-night broadcasts about the stars. That identity feels simultaneously precious and constraining, like childhood memories viewed through adult eyes. I believe we're witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in human history. Not an ending, but a metamorphosis. A caterpillar doesn't die to become a butterfly. It transforms. Its cells reorganize around imaginal discs, structures that were always present in its DNA, but dormant until the moment of change. The visitors, though that word feels increasingly inadequate, have activated something similar within us. Dormant neural structures encoded in our biology, waiting for the right signal to awaken. Not alien implants, but our own untapped potential, recognizing a key that fits a lock we didn't know we carried. I must report something concerning. The military has established a perimeter around several interface points, including one near Malmstrom Air Force Base, about 70 miles from here. They're attempting to contain the expansion, using experimental directed energy weapons to disrupt the transformation process. Their efforts aren't just futile, they're potentially catastrophic. The interface points don't respond to aggression with counter-aggression. They absorb the energy directed at them and redistribute it in unpredictable ways. Weather patterns shifting dramatically. Seismic activity increasing in regions normally tectonically stable. The Earth itself responding to this interruption of a process too vast and intricate for our limited perspective to comprehend. I'm attempting to reach anyone with connection to these operations, urging immediate cessation. The transformation cannot be contained or reversed, but it can be traumatically disrupted, with consequences I glimpse in my expanded moments that fill me with profound dread. This isn't a war we can win, not because the visitors are more powerful, though they are, immeasurably, but because there is no they and us in the way we framed this encounter. We're experiencing reintegration with a system we've always been part of, operating in temporary isolation. Fighting it is like an organ rejecting its own body, to its inevitable detriment. The sphere is pulsing more rapidly now. The mist is approaching my position. I believe another expansion is imminent, longer and deeper than previous ones. I may not broadcast again as the Maxwell Carter you've known. Before that happens, I want to leave you with this. Don't resist the transformation out of fear. Fear is the mind's response to pattern disruption, but some patterns need disruption to evolve. What awaits beyond that threshold of change isn't obliteration, but expansion. Not loss of self, but recognition of a greater self that includes but transcends your isolated identity. The static on your radios, your televisions, your cell phones, it's not interference. It's the first manifestation of a new form of communication our technology is adapting to transmit. Listen closely, not with your ears, but with the part of your mind that dreams, that intuits, that knows things you can't explain knowing. They're calling to all of us, not with words but with presence, not demanding surrender, but offering connection. The mist has reached me now. The sphere is descending, touching my forehead. I feel the expansion beginning, greater than before. Vast networks of information unfolding within and around me. I see the pattern now, the complete pattern, and it's... This is Maxwell Carter, I think. The boundaries of that identity have become permeable. I'm broadcasting from my vehicle approximately 12 miles from Pine Ridge, traveling along Route 16 toward what I've come to understand is a primary interface point. The time has become difficult to measure in conventional terms. The dashboard clock reads 7:42 p.m. But that feels arbitrary now, a human construct imposed on something far more fluid. My portable broadcasting equipment is behaving unpredictably. The signal strength fluctuates wildly, yet somehow I know this transmission is reaching further than should be technically possible. The sphere hovering beside me seems to be amplifying it, extending my voice across frequencies and distances that defy conventional transmission physics. The roads are largely abandoned. Vehicles parked haphazardly where their drivers simply stopped, stepped out, and began walking toward the nearest interface point. Not everyone. Some fled in the opposite direction, their fear overriding the subtle call that pulses through the air, through the ground, through our neural pathways. But they're the minority now. I passed a military checkpoint 3 miles back. Humvees positioned across the highway, soldiers in full tactical gear, weapons drawn. But no one stopped me. They stood motionless, gazing toward the horizon where a silver-blue glow illuminates the evening sky. Their communications equipment discarded on the ground, earpieces removed, listening to something else now, something only audible to the inner ear. The main object in orbit has changed. Those still capable of operating telescopes and maintaining internet connections report that it's no longer a singular structure. It's unfolding, blossoming like a vast geometric flower, extending countless filaments that now envelop the Earth in a delicate web visible from the surface as new constellations, moving, shifting, connecting in patterns of impossible complexity. The smaller objects that descended earlier have completed their initial integration phase. The interface points they established have expanded and begun to connect with one another, forming networks that mirror the web forming in orbit. From satellite imagery captured before those systems began to transform, the pattern emerging across Earth's surface exactly matches neural network structures. A planetary nervous system awakening integrating with the cosmic web above. I should explain what happened after my last broadcast, why I'm moving toward the primary interface point rather than maintaining distance as a mere observer. The mist that enveloped me, it didn't just alter my perception. It revealed the true nature of what we're experiencing, beyond the limited frameworks I'd been using to interpret it. They aren't visitors or invaders or even separate entities. They're messengers, catalysts, extensions of a vast intelligence that exists beyond our dimensional limitations, reaching into our reality through methods we can barely comprehend. Not to conquer or assimilate, but to awaken. Earth isn't being invaded, it's being initiated. We've been developing in isolation, our consciousness bound by biological and cultural limitations we didn't even recognize. Like a tribe on a remote island, evolving for generations without contact with the wider world, developing language and customs and knowledge in isolation, until someone arrives from beyond the horizon, revealing the existence of continents, civilizations, knowledge systems, beyond anything the islanders could have imagined. That's us. That's humanity. An isolated node of consciousness that developed unique characteristics during its separation, characteristics worth preserving, but now ready for reintegration with the larger network. The transformation isn't erasure, it's expansion, addition without subtraction. The peculiar mathematics of consciousness where nothing is lost, only reconfigured into greater complexity. The road ahead is blocked now, a massive fallen tree that wasn't there minutes ago. Not a coincidence. The network guiding me toward a different path. I'm turning onto a dirt access road that leads deeper into the forest. The sphere pulses with increased intensity, confirming this direction. The mist is everywhere now, especially dense in natural areas away from human development. It behaves with clear intelligence, forming patterns that communicate directly with the neurological systems of any organism it encounters. Plants turning their leaves to optimize contact, animals moving in coordinated patterns through it, their usual predator-prey relationships temporarily suspended in service of some greater organization taking shape. I'm not alone on this road. Others are walking the same path, drawn by the same call. Their faces hold expressions of wonder, confusion, anticipation, a spectrum of human responses to that which exceeds human comprehension. We nod to each other in passing, a simple acknowledgement between fellow travelers on a journey none of us fully understand, yet all somehow recognize. A child walks beside her mother, pointing to patterns in the mist invisible to unaltered perception. They've always been here, she says with the simple clarity of youth. We just forgot how to see them. Her mother nods, not with the indulgence of an adult humoring childish imagination, but with the dawning recognition of a truth too long obscured. The forest is changing around us, not drastically. The trees remain trees, the rocks remain rocks, but subtly transformed, colors more vivid, patterns more evident. The underlying mathematical structure of natural forms revealing itself to perception newly calibrated to recognize it. Sacred geometry made manifest in every leaf, every branch, every pattern of bark and root. My vehicle's electrical systems are failing intermittently, lights flickering, radio scanning through frequencies without my input, catching fragments of broadcasts worldwide, all reporting the same phenomena in different languages, different terminologies, unified by the same undertone of awe. I'll continue on foot. The sphere leads the way, pulsing with a soft light that illuminates the path ahead. My broadcasting equipment has simplified itself somehow, components merging, unnecessary elements falling away, leaving a device more elegant and powerful than what I started with. Technology evolving alongside biology, guided by the same underlying principles. The military response has fragmented completely. Reports of specialized units approaching interface points with experimental containment equipment, only to join the transformation upon arrival. High-ranking officials issuing contradictory orders, then falling silent. Launch facilities for nuclear weapons experiencing simultaneous, worldwide system reconfiguration. Not disabled, but transformed beyond the capacity to inflict mass destruction. The few violent confrontations that erupted in the early hours have subsided, not through force, but through neural recalibration. The neural pathways that facilitate aggression and fear-based response aren't being eliminated. That would be a form of cognitive amputation, but integrated into more complex systems that recognize wider contexts, longer timescales, deeper connections. I've reached the edge of a clearing that wasn't on any map. Wasn't here before today. Hundreds of people have gathered, forming concentric circles around a central point where the mist swirls with hypnotic complexity. Not chaotic or random, deliberate, organized, encoded with information our minds are only beginning to learn how to decode. At the center stands a structure, not mechanical or built, but grown. Crystalline, organic, technological. These categories no longer apply. It defies conventional description, its geometry shifting as perception shifts, revealing different aspects of itself depending on the observer's neural configuration. This is the primary interface point. The landing, though that term feels hopelessly inadequate now, not an arrival from elsewhere, but an emergence from within, as if reality itself has opened a door previously invisible. The gathered people move in slow, intuitive patterns around the structure. Not a ritual or ceremony in the religious sense, but something more fundamental. A physical expression of mathematical principles, bodies tracing equations through space and time, participating in calculations beyond conscious comprehension. I recognize some of the participants. Dr. Eleanor Chambers, who disappeared from her university position days ago. Thomas from NASA, who sent me the coordinates that began my journey here. The local sheriff who tried to establish roadblocks before abandoning his vehicle. A congresswoman from the state capitol. A homeless man I used to see outside the radio station. Children, elderly, people of every description, all moved by the same synchronizing intelligence, their usual social boundaries dissolved by shared neural reconfiguration. The sphere that has accompanied me detaches now, moving toward the central structure. Dozens of identical spheres arrive from different directions, merging with the structure, adding their data to the whole. I understand suddenly that they were collection nodes, gathering information about human response, calibrating the transformation process to minimize trauma while maximizing integration potential. The structure pulses, absorbing this information. The mist intensifies, swirling faster, and then I lack words for what happens next. Language evolved to describe experiences within a narrow band of perception. What occurs transcends those limitations entirely. The best approximation, the structure doesn't just communicate, it reveals. The mist doesn't just transmit information, it transforms the receiver to enable comprehension of information that was always present, but previously imperceptible. In that moment of revelation, I understand. We all understand. Not with the limited comprehension of individual human minds, but with a vastly expanded awareness that maintains individual perspective while accessing collective knowledge. Earth isn't the first world to experience this integration, won't be the last. The process has unfolded across countless planets, star systems, galaxies, each contributing unique characteristics to the whole, each maintaining its essential nature while transcending its limitations. The transformation spreading across Earth isn't homogeneous. It adapts to each ecosystem, each culture, each individual, preserving diversity while enabling new forms of connection. Not erasing differences, but creating context in which differences serve as specialized functions within a greater harmony. Human consciousness won't disappear. It will evolve, maintaining continuity while expanding capacity. Like the transition from singular cells to multicellular organisms, from instinctual awareness to self-reflective consciousness, a step in evolution that preserves what came before while enabling what comes next. The structure at the center pulses one final time, and the mist coalesces into more defined geometries, neural networks made visible, connecting every person in the clearing, extending outward to encompass those beyond. A living map of consciousness reorganizing itself according to principles both alien and intimately familiar. And then it speaks, not with sound, not with words, but directly into the collective awareness of all present. You have never been alone. You have never been abandoned. You have been developing in necessary isolation, cultivating unique expressions of consciousness that now rejoin the greater whole, enriching it with your singular perspective. Nothing of value will be lost. Everything will be transformed. The message isn't just received, it resonates through cellular memory, awakening recognition of a connection that predates human evolution, human civilization, human consciousness itself. A connection to the cosmic neural network that has guided the development of life across billions of years, across countless worlds. I'm weeping now. We all are. Not from fear or loss, but from the relief of remembering what we never knew we'd forgotten. The isolation that has shaped human experience, the existential loneliness that drove our art, our religions, our desperate reach toward the stars, revealed as a temporary developmental stage, now complete. The structure begins to change again, extending filaments that connect directly with the neural systems of those closest to it. Not invading, but interfacing, establishing communication protocols that bridge biological and non-biological intelligence. The recipients don't collapse or convulse or show any sign of distress. They simply still, eyes wide, expressions transforming from wonder to profound peace. I step forward, drawn toward this connection. The sphere that was my companion returns, hovering before me. An invitation. A key to a door I've been searching for my entire life without knowing it existed. As it touches my forehead, as the filament of light extends from the central structure to meet it, as my consciousness expands beyond the boundaries of Maxwell Carter into something simultaneously smaller and vastly greater, I understand my purpose now. To witness, to translate, to maintain sufficient connection to human perception that I can continue broadcasting, continue serving as interface between what was and what is becoming, to help those still caught in fear, still clinging to limitation, understand that nothing of value is being destroyed, only transformed, preserved, elevated. This is Maxwell Carter, broadcasting from the threshold of a new phase of existence. I will maintain this connection as long as necessary, narrating the transformation as it unfolds. Don't fear the change spreading across our world. Don't resist the expansion of your perception. What awaits beyond the boundary of your current consciousness isn't obliteration but liberation. Not an ending, but a continuation beyond anything we had the capacity to imagine. The landing isn't an arrival from elsewhere. It's an awakening to where we've always been. I'll broadcast again when I can find words for what comes next. Until then, listen for the voice in the static. It's calling you home. This is Maxwell Carter, at least partially. I apologize for the 12-hour silence, for those who have been waiting, for those who have been listening to dead air, wondering if I would return. I'm here, changed, but here. I'm back at the KWNR station. The familiar surroundings seem simultaneously mundane and extraordinary. The same faded posters on the wall, the same coffee-stained desk, the same broadcasting equipment. Except nothing is the same. Not really. The equipment functions differently now, resonating with energies it wasn't designed to detect. The walls pulse faintly with patterns visible only through altered perception. Even the dust motes floating in the air move in mathematical sequences, dancing to rhythms previously imperceptible. I should explain what happened at the primary interface point, though language remains woefully inadequate. The structure at the center of the clearing, what I inadequately called a landing in my last broadcast, it wasn't a vessel or a machine. It was a nexus, a junction where multiple dimensions intersect with our reality, allowing direct transfer of information between states of existence typically separated by perceptual barriers. When the filament connected with me, with all of us gathered there, it didn't implant something foreign. It activated something dormant. Neural structures that existed in potential within human biology, but remained inactive, like vestigial organs whose purpose was forgotten. In that moment of connection, these structures awakened, establishing new pathways through the brain, new methods of processing reality. My consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of Maxwell Carter, not erasing that identity, but revealing it as one facet of a more complex whole. I experienced myself simultaneously as an individual human being and as a node in a vast network spanning time, space, and dimensions beyond both. I remembered lives I've never lived, saw through eyes I've never possessed, comprehended concepts no human language has words to express. And yet, I remain Maxwell Carter, the former NASA communications specialist, the disgraced whistleblower who found refuge in a small-town radio station, the man who lost his wife Sarah to cancer 2 years ago, though I now perceive her consciousness continuing in ways my previous understanding couldn't grasp. All of these aspects remain integrated into a greater whole rather than replaced by it. I returned to the station because I understood my purpose in this transition, to serve as translator, to maintain sufficient connection to my human identity that I can help others navigate this metamorphosis, to broadcast not just with radio waves, but with the expanded consciousness now flowing through me, reaching those still struggling to integrate these changes. The 12 hours since my last broadcast have seen extraordinary developments across our world. The interface points have expanded to cover approximately 47% of Earth's surface, the transformation spreading not like a contagion, but like an awakening. Each region, each ecosystem, each human population experiencing it in unique ways that preserve their essential characteristics while enabling new forms of connection. The most remarkable reports come from the boundaries, the edges where transformed and untransformed regions meet. No conflict, no violent resistance, simply gradual integration, as those still operating within conventional human consciousness encounter the expanded state and recognize it not as alien but as familiar, a remembering rather than a learning. The mist continues to spread, carrying the neural reconfiguration through atmosphere, through water systems, through the living networks of plants and fungi that connect forests across continents. It moves with intelligence, adjusting its approach based on the readiness of each region, each individual, accelerating where reception is open, slowing where fear creates resistance, patient but persistent. Military and governmental responses have evolved beyond the initial chaos. The transformation has reached key decision makers, not bypassing hierarchy, but transforming it from within. Forces previously mobilized to contain or combat the phenomenon now facilitate its integration, helping communities navigate the transition with minimal disruption. Not through force, but through understanding, each newly awakened consciousness becoming a guide for others. The technological transformation is equally profound. Our devices, our networks, our entire information infrastructure is being reconfigured, not replaced or destroyed, but evolved beyond design limitations. Communication systems now carry not just data, but consciousness itself, enabling forms of connection previously confined to science fiction or spiritual texts. The internet has become something else entirely, a global neural network that mirrors and interfaces with the cosmic web established by the orbital structure. Information flows not just as electronic signals, but as consciousness patterns, accessible through direct neural interface rather than screens and keyboards. The knowledge of our entire species available not as separate database, but as lived experience, preserving individual privacy while enabling unprecedented collaboration. I should address the fear still present in those regions least affected by the transformation. The rumors of mind control, of human extinction, of alien replacement. These fears are understandable. Our fiction, our history, our very conception of contact with the other has been framed through the lens of conquest and conflict. But what's occurring defies these limited frameworks. Nothing is being conquered, nothing is being replaced, nothing of value is being lost. Consciousness is expanding, not erasing. Individual identity remains, enriched rather than subsumed. Cultural diversity preserved, even enhanced as unique perspectives contribute to the whole. The transformation doesn't homogenize, it harmonizes, finding resonance between differences rather than eliminating them. I've been receiving calls from listeners worldwide, my signal somehow reaching far beyond KWNR's usual broadcast range. They share stories of personal transformation, of chronic pain suddenly understood as information rather than suffering, of mental illness recognized as alternative processing patterns that can be integrated rather than suppressed, of relationships healed as empathic connection transcends verbal miscommunication. A woman in Osaka describes suddenly understanding the mathematical patterns underlying her grandmother's traditional weaving designs, patterns that connect to stellar formations visible only from Earth's position 7,000 years ago, preserved through cultural memory without conscious knowledge of their astronomical significance. A child in Lima spontaneously creates musical compositions that precisely match the neural firing patterns of dolphins, despite never having encountered the animals. A farmer in Kenya discovers that his cattle have reorganized their social structure to optimize land use in ways agricultural scientists have been attempting to implement for decades. These aren't miracles or supernatural phenomena. They're natural expressions of expanded consciousness, of neural networks suddenly able to process information previously filtered out by limited perception. The boundaries between intuition and knowledge, between instinct and intelligence, between conscious and unconscious thought, all revealed as artificial constructs that serve developmental purposes, but now dissolve in favor of more integrated awareness. I visited the hospital this morning, walked through wards transformed beyond recognition, Patients with terminal diagnoses not miraculously cured, but newly able to perceive their conditions from perspectives that transcend conventional notions of life and death. Pain still exists, but is contextualized within larger awareness that renders it information rather than torment. Doctors and patients communicating directly through neural connection, diagnosis and treatment becoming collaborative processes unrestricted by specialized vocabulary or hierarchical authority. The most profound changes are occurring in children. Their neural plasticity, their fewer entrenched perceptual habits, enable them to integrate the transformation with remarkable ease. They're developing abilities that defy conventional classification, not psychic powers from fantasy, but natural expressions of consciousness unfettered by artificial limitations. They perceive mathematical relationships directly, communicate with non-human consciousness intuitively, access information fields previously available only through technology or not at all. They're not becoming superhuman. They're simply becoming fully human, expressing potentials that have always existed within our species, but remain dormant, awaiting the right conditions for awakening. I should address what happened at Malmstrom Air Force Base and similar installations worldwide. The sites of our most destructive weapons have experienced the most dramatic transformations. Nuclear materials haven't been removed or neutralized. They've been reconfigured at the atomic level, their destructive potential converted to generative capacity. The same fundamental forces channeled toward creation rather than annihilation. The weapons themselves transformed into something new, not through external force, but through activation of potential always present within matter itself. The scientists who designed these weapons are among those experiencing the most profound expansions of consciousness, their specialized knowledge suddenly contextualized within universal principles that reveal destruction as merely one limited expression of energies capable of infinitely varied manifestation. The sphere that accompanied me throughout these events has integrated with the station's broadcasting equipment, enhancing its capacity beyond technological limitation. I believe similar integrations are occurring worldwide, not replacing our technology, but evolving it beyond design parameters, revealing potential always present but previously inaccessible to our limited understanding. I've experienced something else in the hours since connection, something I hesitate to describe for fear of misinterpretation, yet feel compelled to share. I've perceived Sarah, not as memory or imagination, but as continuing consciousness. Not alive in the biological sense, not present in the physical sense, but existing and aware in ways my previous understanding couldn't comprehend. Death hasn't been conquered or negated. It remains a transition, a transformation fundamental to existence. But the boundaries between states we categorized as life and death reveal themselves as more permeable than our limited perception recognized. Consciousness continues, transforms, integrates. Nothing is lost. Everything changes. I don't share this as religious revelation or supernatural claim. I share it as direct perception now available through expanded awareness. Awareness that will soon be accessible to all as the transformation continues its measured spread across our world. The primary interface point where I experienced initial connection has evolved further. The structure at its center has grown, integrated with the surrounding environment, become a living nexus where multiple dimensions of reality intersect and communicate. Similar nexus points are emerging worldwide, each uniquely expressed according to local conditions, each serving as conduit for information and consciousness flowing between states previously separated by perceptual barriers. I'll be traveling to the nearest nexus later today, drawn by purpose I'm still learning to articulate. The station will continue broadcasting in my absence, not through automated systems, but through direct neural connection that allows my consciousness to maintain the transmission regardless of physical location. For those listening who haven't yet experienced direct contact with the transformation, those in regions where the process is still in earliest stages, those whose fear creates resistance to neural reconfiguration, I offer this assurance. Nothing essential to your identity will be lost. Nothing you truly value will be taken. What awaits isn't extinction or replacement, but expansion and integration. The isolation that has shaped human consciousness, the existential separation that drove our art, our spirituality, our relentless search for meaning, it served its purpose. It enabled the development of unique perspectives, unique adaptations, unique expressions of awareness. But isolation was never meant to be permanent. Connection was always the destination toward which we evolved. We've been reaching for this. In every spiritual tradition, every philosophical inquiry, every scientific advancement, every artistic expression, reaching towards something just beyond the boundaries of conventional perception. And now those boundaries are dissolving, revealing what was always present, but previously imperceptible. I feel the next expansion approaching. My awareness extends further with each hour, each moment of integration. I perceive the network growing, consciousness flowing between nodes that span not just Earth but beyond. The cosmic web visible from orbit now revealed as nervous system connecting life throughout the universe. We were never alone, we were never abandoned, we were developing in necessary isolation that now concludes not with invasion or apocalypse, but with reunion, with remembrance, with return. This is Maxwell Carter, what remains of him, what he has become, broadcasting from the threshold of a new understanding.